going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch, back with another video. I've got a few in the hopper, so I apologize if there's been a little bit of a delay lately. But I am working on still the Video Essentials series. Thanks for all the awesome feedback from that. The first episode that was up, and it's called LD History 101. If you want to check that out and get primed and ready for a whole series of information about Laserdiscs, from hooking them up to what they mean, all the terminology behind them, and what the best players are, what the best discs are, etc., etc. So speaking of discs, I figured I'd do a couple Laserdisc spotlight reviews, and these were probably seen in my last update video. It was a lot I got from Rick, who is one of the cool guys on Laserdisc Database, who sells a lot of vinyl and also some Laserdisc, and I picked this up, and I'd been hemming and hawing about picking this up, but it was $1, so I had to. Air Force One. Yes, the Wolfgang Petersen 1997 Die Hard on a Plane flick with tough warrior Harrison Ford, president. He's always in the running between his character and Bill Pullman's character from Independence Day for Best Movie President. So I like the creepy Donald Pleasance from Escape from New York. Anyways, this disc is a Columbia Pictures disc, and you know what that means. Indeed. They were very keen on using Sony's DADC USA pressing plant for a lot of their discs, and that plant, especially in the 90s, had big problems with laser rot. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but if you haven't seen the film, yes, it's a kind of flag-waving, jingoistic, raw go president film directed by a German, Wolfgang Petersen, who had done Das Boot, another great film. Jürgen Prochnow from Das Boot also shows up in here as an evil Russian that is taken prisoner early on in the film in a scene that sets up the kind of political backdrop for this story, with Harrison Ford's present as a take no guff from the terrorists and make sure that terrorism never wins, that kind of thing. So he makes a very controversial decision to capture this dictator and put him in prison, and immediately sets up the United States as a target for other extremists. And quickly, this whole plot apparently comes into play, wherein Gary Oldman and his crew of possibly television journalists work their way onto Air Force One as the president is leaving, after his big press conference where he unveiled his new very controversial stance on terrorism and world politics. So everybody's on this plane, which is the stand-in for Nakatomi Plaza, and this pretty bold-faced Die Hard knockoff. And then, things spiral out of control from there. And it's, if you've seen Die Hard, it's very structurally similar, where there's a lot of chess-like set pieces, and in a confined space of, Air Force One and all the different kind of characters on it, some of which are turncoats, some of which are, Russian extremists, some of which are the president, and the Russian extremists don't know that the president's still on the plane at one point. There's a lot of these kind of intricate maneuverings, especially when you have multiple levels of the plane. There's a lower level where Harrison Ford is hiding out for quite a bit of the film and fighting Andrew Divoff, Apache from Lost fame, and big cast. You got Glenn Close as the vice president, Paul Guilfoyle in here, Bill Macy, Xander Berkeley, etc., etc., etc. Just about everybody and their mothers in this flick. And even Al, or Dr. Yui, Dean Stockwell, is in here as well. Big, huge, sprawling, epic as it can be, fit inside a jumbo jet. And it is, still entertaining as a thriller, many years on, getting close to 20 years on. The special effects, however, do not hold up, especially those of computer variety. Some of the simpler effects, there are a lot of scenes in the tail of the plane with the ramp lowered that, have just simple green screen effects that are pretty good. But it's when it gets a little bit more ambitious that things don't quite add up. There is a commentary track on this disc from William Petersen and another gentleman who's identified as Michael Coleman, doing more of an interview. But I know there's another voice in the room, so I don't know who the third party is. And I have yet to see anybody identify exactly who Michael Coleman is. But it's a good idea, because I've seen or listened to a lot of commentary tracks with directors who will let you know what's going on action-wise on the screen. And that does happen to a small extent on this commentary track. But having an interviewer there to kind of push you and ask a lot of interesting questions at times, it definitely kicks, Wolfgang Petersen into gear. That had there not been another person in the room kind of digging into these kind of ideas, he would have just kind of either been quiet, as you hear a lot in commentaries with long gaps in them, or he would have just skipped over some interesting possible elements and just focused on, oh, here's the character, he's walking down the hallway. Even Wolfgang Petersen admits that there's a plane crash sequence in the film. I'm not saying it's Air Force One or another one. But it's one of the scenes that's held up as not holding up effects-wise over the years. And even he admits that he didn't think that scene was going to work. And in the context of the commentary track recorded 1 year after the release of the film, so in 1998, he was saying that they pulled it together at the last minute and made it work. But nearly 20 years on, it didn't really work, unfortunately. Some of the scenes with the fighter jets that are kind of hanging around Air Force One are a little dodgy at times too, and there's some kind of composite green screen shots with people in parachutes that are a little funky looking. So it's a very adult serious movie that is strangely undermined at times by comical effect shots. The interior of the plane, if you have ever played Call of Duty 4. And you've done the secret Save the President mission, you're going to know this pretty well in and out. It's pretty much the same exact layout. But it definitely sets up a good playscape for all these kind of events. Video-wise, this thing is pretty spectacular looking, apart from the laser rod issue I mentioned. But this is a late-ish release from Columbia. They were putting out some pretty solid transfers at the time. If only the pressing plants had been able to kind of match the quality of their video processing. I don't know if this is a super NTSC disc like Fifth Element or kind of similar 1997 releases were. But it wouldn't surprise me, because at times this gets near DVD quality. On my CRT tube TV, it was very, very crisp and just popped. On my projector, the brightness levels actually had to be jacked down a little bit. It was a little bit too kind of washed out. Once I adjusted it, the picture started to come alive a little bit more. Michael Ballhaus is the director of photography here, but his work is not always gobsmackingly gorgeous. Because his playground for a lot of the film is drab offices between the Earthbound conference room that the vice president is in. Not really much going on there, it's, apart from Browns, etc. And the plane itself is just loaded with beiges and kind of tans, and there's not a lot going on visually, except for in the kind of control headquarters section of the plane where Gary Oldman is holed up through most of the film. And that's where the kind of blues and the neon colors pop a little bit, and all the control panels in the background are all littered with oranges and yellows and reds. And whenever the scenes are set in that room, you're usually enthralled by the visuals. Even the kind of steely tones of the undersection of the plane looks pretty solid. So yeah, it looked good overall, given what the color palette of the film is. Flesh tones were pretty natural throughout. The sound is incredible. This has an AC3 track, though the PCM stereo track, which has a surround matrix encoded presence, is very, very good. But the 5.1 track, lots of discrete surround elements. The gunfights in particular are moments that you're going to want to fire up. Even the very early ones where the Russians take over the plane, and then some of the later ones when Harrison Ford becomes armed himself. That stuff really is amazing. You'll hear discrete stuff from left and right behind you, and a lot of the exterior shots with fighter jets and stuff sound pretty good too. A lot of deep bass. Jerry Goldsmith did the score, And also the commentary track lets you in on the fact that he only had a few days, like I think even less than 2 full weeks to score this thing, which pretty much almost broke him. I think Joel McNeely helped him out with some cues, but I guess Randy Newman had done the film before, and Wolfgang Petersen wasn't happy with his results and replaced him with Jerry Goldsmith. So there's a lot of kind of typical Marshall sounding score moments, and it's very similar to what you'd hear in like Clear and Present Danger. And this film, almost as much as it is, essentially Die Hard knockoff, it's almost like a spiritual sequel to Clear and Present Danger, where Harrison Ford's character in that is getting closer and closer to the presidency. And this one, he is the president, but it is not actually tied to that series at all, though it has that kind of feel. But yeah, definitely a showcase film, very, very good quality. Images pop. The detail is very good. There's some scenes early on where Gary Oldman's character has a herringbone pattern on like a woolen suit, and his guide has a very finely detailed kind of checkered plaid gray suit, and there's not any kind of digital artifacting or comb filter artifacting in there. So I was definitely impressed with the detail, and if you can get around the laser rot, that's the big problem. This is one of the releases, if you look in the Laserdisc database, where it'll say avoid this release. There's a Japanese version. I haven't been able to do a comparison video-wise. I know that's, this is a 2.35 to 1 Panavision film, so chances are the subtitles are out of the frame on that in the black bars on the bottom. So that'll help. And that also does have an AC3 track, so and I don't think there are any route reports on it. But as far as I know, the only plant to press this in the States was DADC USA, and it's one of the most rotted titles out there. And in fact, if you read the information section on the LDDB, I think the first poster mentioned that it took him 12 copies of this film to find a clean one. And other people were noting that the third side, the last side, is in CAV. Somebody said that that disc usually looks good, but for me, each of the 3 sides was rotted. They do start off on my copy heavily rotted, like in the beginning, and then kind of tame down after about 10 minutes or so. So it's still fully watchable. I just watched it on my projector today. I mentioned in my previous one I wouldn't invite anybody over to watch this, but for me, myself, it's actually not that rotted, and it doesn't affect the sound quality from what I could tell. But yeah, rip-roaring sound. The film itself wasn't the most original thing ever, but I mean, the performances were good. You've got Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman chewing scenery. And I did appreciate that there were consequences for everything. Even just simple action scenes. If somebody gets killed, you find out that he's a pilot later. Things have a cumulative effect. And even when you think that the day is won, there's all sorts of like geopolitical situations and a larger picture at play. And just the circumstances of being, on this big plane that has fuel leaking from it. All of these events that seem like a great idea at the time of doing them to thwart the enemies, later also thwart the heroes. So that was pretty cool, actually, that the film doesn't end when you think it's going to end. It's almost like if there was like another 20, 25 minutes tacked on at the end of Die Hard, with circumstances involving the building or something to that effect, where that threatened the lives of the survivors of Hans Gruber. Not to say that Gary Oldman's character dies or anything, so I don't want to ruin it or spoil anything, but hopefully everybody's seen this film by now, I guess, maybe, I don't know. And even you kind of know what happens to some characters. It's pretty much spilled in the trailer, but what are you going to do? Speaking of trailers, the original theatrical trailer is tacked on at the end. But yeah, NTSC disc, maybe Super NTSC, looks great. Visually, very, very crisp and DVD-like in appearance. The disc may be a rotter. Probably will be a rotter. 5.1 surround track is stunning and awesome. So if you can get it for $1, it's worth picking up. And I'll probably maybe pick up a couple other dollar copies and see if I can compile a really good working copy. I know it's out on Blu-ray and DVD and everything, and I'm even wondering like how the HD presentation will even more kind of point out the glaring kind of aging aspects of the CG effects. But I think I'll just stick with Laserdisc on this title. Anyways, thanks for hanging out. We're going to do some more Spotlight reviews and all sorts of other good stuff. So stick around here. And thanks for everybody for the comments and the emails and all the other correspondence. Glad you guys are having fun. And look forward to making more videos. Cheers.